Again, welcome to the Parks Rec and Open Space Commission meeting. Looking at the agenda, we have item number 1, call to order, roll call. If you would begin with the roll call, and I'll read off the land acknowledgement.
Certainly. Commissioner Abbott.
Present.
Commissioner Armendariz.
Here.
Commissioner Beal.
Here.
Commissioner Chang Frank.
Here.
Commissioner Kent.
Here.
Commissioner Price.
Here.
Chair Martin. There you go.
My Wi-Fi. Okay. Acknowledge. Okay. Can't hear anybody.
We can hear you now.
Okay, great. I'm just going to keep my video off for now. The following land grant acknowledgement statement shall be read at the beginning of each city council meeting and advisory body meeting for Albany City Council minute action November 15, 2021. The city of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Village of Luzon. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The city of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home. Item 2, approval of minutes.
I'm prepared to move that we approve the minutes from the November 4th meeting.
Second.
Okay, can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Abbott.
Yes.
Commissioner Armendariz.
Yes.
Commissioner Beal.
Yes.
Commissioner Chang Frank.
Yes.
Commissioner Kent.
Yes.
Commissioner Price.
Yes.
Chair Martin.
Yes. Next up is public comment. This is for, wait a minute, I'm looking at the wrong thing. But yeah, public comment. For persons desiring to address the advisory body on an item that is not on the agenda, please note that each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. The Brown Act limits the Commission's ability to take and or discuss items that are not on the agenda. Therefore, such items are normally referred to staff for comment or to a future agenda. So please raise your hand if you have a comment for something you want to say that's not on the agenda. It looks like we have one. Sid, if you can let them in.
Jeremy, it looks like I'm not capable of doing that. Would you mind letting them in?
Okay, looks like you're co-host now, so try again, Sid.
Okay, great. Thank you.
It looks like the speaker can speak now.
Yes.
Yeah, hi, good evening. It's Jeremiah. I have a few questions about our parks, parklands, open space areas. I was wondering how many drinking fountains we have total per each park. for each open space? Like the Ohlone Greenway, how many drinking fountains do we have there? I was wondering also how many public restrooms are located at our open spaces in our parks? How many? And are they cleaned regularly? Do we really care about them? Are they maintained regularly, or are there cobwebs and are they just dirty? Because it'd be a good idea that we maintain these really good services for the community if we have them. Because where we don't have them is a problem. Because nobody can go to the bathroom or drink water. And those are things that are natural to the human body. They're kind of like basics. So we got to start somewhere with the basics. Also, I'm wondering what policies with commissioner this area, this purview, to where we have, let's say, a homeless person camping on an open space, or we have a homeless person camping on a public park in a tent, or maybe parking their car in a parking space just outside or inside open space area, or in front of a public park. What policies are created for individuals, humans, sleeping in their cars, homeless people, sleeping in tents at these parks, open spaces? What are we going to do when that happens? What policies are created? Because right now it's kind of vague. I mean, we've got people sleeping in their cars in the recreation center parking lot for 3 months, and just nothing's happening. There's no place for anybody to go to the bathroom. There's no porta potties on the Ohlone Greenway. So I just think it would be really a good idea to use some of these millions and millions and millions of dollars we always talk about to go on the internet and pay $700 to own a porta potty. You could buy a porta potty for $700, and then the city owns it forever. You know, I mean, we got to use our money wisely. You know, and then the porta potty can go on a little trailer with wheels, and it could be moved around from location to location. It'd be easy. And then you can empty it at the Public Works building in the sewer drain. You can drive it and tow it with a little trailer and pressure wash it out with a sprayer, and, you know, pressure washer with water and spray it out and sanitize it, and then service it and drive it back to the park all clean. So there's simple ways to do this. So let's all try to work together. Thanks.
Thank you for that comment. And some of that will be addressed in this meeting. Next up, let's see, no other raised hands. Next up, we have item 4, announcements, staff and commissioner announcements, reports and updates of status of previous agenda items. Sid, do you have any announcements for us?
I do. Thank you, Chair Martin and commissioners. The City Council last Monday received the final draft of the 2021 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan. Council provided input to staff and the consultants, and it will be brought back to Council with those updates at a future Council meeting. As we continue to move safely towards more in-person programming, I wanted to give some updates on some of the events that we have hosted. Last month, we hosted the Friends of Libraries annual book sale. Currently, we're hosting walk-up COVID-19 testing, which is every Tuesday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the community center. These tests are administered by Curative, and we appreciate their hosting this important service. You can schedule an appointment by calling Curative, and that number is 888-702-9042. We're also in contact with Curative regarding the availability of walk-up testing. The Senior Center continues to offer in-person dining every Wednesday and Thursday at 11:30 a.m., meal deliveries on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and the pick up and go meals on Thursdays, as well as hybrid in-person and virtual programming. Our in-person lunch has been at capacity the last few weeks, so we are in contact with our meal provider to expand the capacity and or add additional days of service. And those are my announcements. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? And then Isabel Leduc, who's often helping to run these meetings, she's out tonight. So thank you, Sid, for working with us on that.
You're welcome.
Other commissioners have announcements.
Let me, if I may, just jump in and mention two events that are coming up. This Saturday, actually, is the first ever winter stroll. The idea is it's a smaller event. It's all outdoors. It's not going to draw anywhere near the crowds of a traditional, pre-2020 stroll. But it should be a nice event, and it brings people to the commercial district, which is what we're looking for. And this is the second weekend of Santa on Solano. It's the 14th year of this free visit with Santa. Again, it's all outdoors, and it brings hundreds of people to Solano Avenue in the season, and looking forward to that. That's 12 to 3 Saturday, Sunday, this weekend, and next Sunday. Just want to make those quick announcements.
Okay, other announcements from commissioners? I had a brief, just kind of heads up update on. I mentioned before there was some sort of surveillance equipment in one of the public parks, and it turns out it's still there. So so people should just be aware when they go into Albany Hill Park. There's a surveillance camera that, looking up the model, it looks like it can record video, audio, and still photos, and it's mounted on the cross there, and the city says they're not responsible for it. So whoever put it up there is surveilling the area, and people should be aware of that. Okay, if there's no other announcements, next up we have presentations. Item number 551, Public Works presentation. Update on parks, recreation, and open space maintenance activities and budget, including accounting of Measure M. Staff recommendation is for information only. Sid, can you introduce who we have here?
Oh, am I up? Sorry, when I get promoted to panelist, it kind of cuts out for a second. So hi, my name is Razu. I'm the Public Works Manager, and this is the second of our semi-annual Public Works updates. I'll be providing some information on Public Works activities, maintenance activities over the past 6 months or so, and I have a short presentation here. Let me see if I can share screen. Okay. Are you seeing the presentation now? Okay, thank you. Let's see. Anyway, so this is a part of our semi-annual Public Works update. We are going to be providing these once every 6 months or so. Last one was in February. Been a little bit more than 6 months, so hopefully we got a little bit to report on. And kind of here's the basic format we're going to go through. We'll have an overview of Public Works, a little bit on the status of parks, some of the challenges and opportunities we're facing, update on the Parks Master Plan and how that'll affect our maintenance activities, and finally get some help from Devora on the budget, because I know there were questions last time about some budget items. First of all, kind of an overview of Public Works. We have, sorry, hold on a second. This kind of gives a basic organizational chart of Public Works, and you can see we do a lot of things here. We have the capital improvement side, right-of-way, including utilities, roads, and sidewalks, building and facilities, management, parks and play fields, open space, and here it's lumped together with urban forestry, but those are two really separate programs, and then departmental management. And basically each of these areas has its own budget, and there'll be more on that later on in the presentation. Parks maintenance, we have, basically that's kind of gives a little bit more detail on the parks side of things. We do parks operations and maintenance. We have park trees maintenance, and then the play fields, courts, and structures maintenance and repair, and trash management, which, as you can imagine, is kind of a big part of what we do on a daily basis. Our maintenance crew is a staff of 6. Currently, we have 5 that are working right now. They're Jack and Jill of all trades. They do everything throughout town. We work Monday through Friday work week, but we also do have a 24/7 emergency response. So those folks are on call nights and weekends in case there's something that needs to be urgently taken care of. We also do quite a bit with contractors. Being a small city, we can't have the specialized equipment or training to do everything that the city needs to be able to take care of. So we do use contractors quite extensely. And then we were also supplemented by the park stewards from the rec department, who've been doing quite a bit of work helping to manage the parks, keeping things tidy and clean there, and also helping, they do the rentals on the weekend. That they'll help manage those. And we work quite closely with both the park stewards and then the other folks in the rec department to manage park activities. Some good news on the parks. Parks are seeing more use. We've definitely seen an uptick in the past year and a half with the lockdowns. People have been seeking out our parks a lot more, and that's been both a good and a bad thing. We see a lot more use. So that means there's a lot more things that need to get taken care of, but we're really happy to see all the wonderful folks out there taking advantage of the parks that Albany has. As far as our maintenance, we do basically on a weekly basis, we do a trash run. It's actually several times a week. We go to all the different parks. We call it the trash run, but really there is a number of things that we do, including not just picking up trash and litter, but also blowing off the sidewalks, checking the restrooms, restocking if need be, checking, playing fields and the tennis courts, making sure things look good there, restocking, say, dog bags at the dog run area and out at the waterfront and such things like that. As I mentioned, we also do get, we have quite a bit of contract services. For the parks in particular, we have contractors that help us with landscaping, with the irrigation maintenance, cleaning up graffiti, and janitorial. And those are all 4 areas that we particularly, our crews also do a lot of that stuff, but those are areas where we rely fairly heavily on contractors for the day-to-day landscaping, irrigation, and cleanup. And then we also do have some contractors for any sort of repair or specialty maintenance that our crew isn't able to handle. Some recently completed and planned maintenance that we've done. We did a safety assessment since the last time we spoke. So that we hired a contractor who went out and looked at all the different playgrounds, tested the surfaces for impact, looked at all the play equipment to make sure it was safe, and came out with a couple action items from that. One of them was some repairs that need to be done at Terrace Park, and that was completed fairly shortly afterwards. Those were kind of more urgent safety related concerns. And then there's also, from that assessment, we needed to do some repairs to the rubber surfaces at the playgrounds. That's kind of a bigger project and one that we're still working on getting a contractor out to do that. We did restock the 5-bar wood chips. Those are the chips that you see our crew there raking around. Those need to get restocked regularly. We did it once this summer and it seems like they're low again, which is unusual. So we're gonna be putting more of those out there. And then finally, at the kind of end of the fall season here, we closed the ball fields. Those are the playing fields at Memorial Park and at Ocean View to do the aeration and overseed of those turf areas. We also did that at the dog park, not necessarily because we expect to have really great turf there, but just it needs a kind of little bit of TLC every once in a while. Some other upcoming projects that we have, we're ordering some new big belly trash receptacles. Those will go out at the waterfront and at the Albany Hill, top of Taft. We've really gotten a lot of good use out of the big bellies that we have around town. They are wonderful for a number of reasons, including they kind of tamper-proof, and not just from folks getting in there and sorting through the trash, but also they keep out rats and other rodents that might get in there. Finally, we're also looking at implementing a work order system. I think I had mentioned that last time. That's still in process. We've had a few kind of personnel changes here in Public Works, so that got kind of put on the back burner, but that's something we're still hoping to roll out at some point soon. Both the big bellies and a work order system will allow us to be a little bit more data driven. I know we had some questions from the commissioners last time, wanting to find out how much time we spend, our maintenance folks spend in the parks. I don't have that data right now, but that is something that we are hoping to have as we move to this newer work order system. It'll just take a little while for us to get that rolled out and implemented. Some additional challenges and opportunities with the additional use of the parks. We've seen a lot more graffiti. That is something that we've had, just recently. It's been really quite awful. And we've had days where we go out there and clean in the morning, and by the afternoon, it's covered in graffiti again. This one picture here is at Memorial Park, and we actually had a contractor go out there, spend a few hours getting that cleaned up, and then, like I said, by the afternoon, somebody had already gone in there and tagged it up again. Same thing with additional use. We do see a lot more trash and needing to get kind of stay on top of the trash quite a bit more, and that's another area where we've gotten some good help from the park stewards. Another challenge has been the Ohlone exercise equipment that was recently installed just a few years ago. The fixed equipment seems to be performing quite well. It's the equipment that has the moving parts, kind of the press machines and the bicycle, I think, have seen a lot more. I don't think it's necessarily vandalism. Those things are designed to be fairly vandal-proof. It's just not performing the way that we would like it to. So that may be something that we come to the commission with some proposals in the future to replace those with something that might be a little bit more easier to maintain, a little more durable, perhaps. And then finally, a final challenge is SB 1383. It's a new state law, has a lot of parts to it, but the parts that really pertain to our work are the organics procurement requirement. This is part of this law. It seeks to divert the waste streams and put it towards more useful, put it to reclaim waste and be able to use it in useful ways. So for instance, part of this is that the city of Albany on a yearly basis has to purchase 1,364 tons of organic waste every year that we have to purchase in the form of reclaimed mulch or compost. And that's something that is a little scary. That's quite a bit of, that's a lot of product that we have to buy, but also that is an opportunity for us to do a better job of utilizing mulch and compost to keep our parks looking good. The Parks Master Plan that was just mentioned at the top of the meeting, we've been following that process fairly carefully. We know that from the public comments that came in, that maintenance at the parks is a concern. We definitely hear that and hope we can do a better job with maintaining the parks. And one of the things that really stuck out for us in terms of kind of a to-do thing that I think will be really a positive and be helpful is the turf evaluation, which will help us understand the different types of turf, playfields, lawn and ornamental, and set up some basic maintenance standards for each type. And that's something we'll pass on to our contractor as well as our city staff that maintains those areas. And then finally, like I mentioned, the use of compost and mulch from SB 1383, applying that compost on a regular basis to our playfields, to the different areas of turf, I think will improve the health of the at the parks and really give us some good results there. And with that, I'm going to turn it over temporarily to Devora, who's going to give a little bit of information on the budget.
Thank you, Razu. I'm Devora Zotter. I'm the program manager here in Public Works, and have my hands in lots of things, but our operating capital and capital budgets, as well as our grants, are some of the things under my purview. So in general, Public Works organizes our budget by functional program. We want to be able to answer the question for our financial director and for our council, how much does it take to operate and maintain the city? So you'll see here that our budget is split into admin, sewer, storm drain, and maintenance. And within maintenance, we have separate programs for all of the 5 functional maintenance areas. For our purposes today, we, and as part of a pretty significant budget overhaul we did last summer, our budget is actually split in the Parks, Rec, and Open Space areas into parks, street trees, and creeks and open space. We consider parks to be more manicured, installed areas, things like Memorial Park, Terrace Park, whereas creeks and open space is Cortnesis Creek, is Albany Hill, is the Albany Bulb. And then street trees are all of our trees in the public right-of-way. So you can see the different percentages of the overall Public Works budget from here. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, so you'll hear more about creeks and open space when Margot Cunningham comes back to you with her periodic update. To follow with what Razu was talking about today with parks maintenance, you can see here that our parks budget is approximately $710,000 per fiscal year. Now, this includes everything from our parks maintenance services and repair services, as Razu talked about. It includes tools and supplies that our crew uses. It includes an annual contribution to the Tom Bates recreational fields. It includes irrigation and Big Belly costs for our parks. And it includes a percentage of our maintenance crew that Razu referenced. This crew, they work across all of these functional areas, but about 15% of our staff salaries for those maintenance workers is incorporated into the parks budget. I'm happy to answer questions about more details about the parks budget, but that's I think a pretty good overview of what we do. And in terms of costs, we try to really balance how we spend our money on contract services versus supporting our staff. We want our contract services to really be leveraged to take care of day-to-day so that our maintenance staff can be freed up for the more sort of emergency, specialized city knowledge response tasks. And I'm sure everybody wants to know about Measure M, so I'm happy to speak a little bit to that. So I'm actually going to share my screen, if you don't mind. Go. So fairly recently, we put up a web page. It's stalling a little bit while I pull it up. About Measure M, and both details of the measure itself and here we go, and how that details of the revenue and how that money is being spent. So if you go to our city website at albanyca.org, everybody can see my screen? Good. And you go into our finance department, there is a page for the Parks and Open Space parcel tax. So if you go to there, you will be able to see some historical information about the ballot measure itself. Even the ordinance itself is linked. And there's more specific information. So Measure M, since it was voted in 2018, Measure M provides an average of $470,000 in revenue annually. This tax is a special revenue tax, meaning it is kept, I'm sure all of you know this, but it's kept separately from the general fund, and it is directed towards the specific purposes that are outlined in the adopted text of the measure. The tax is adjusted annually for inflation, and for very low income residents, there are exemptions and tax rebates available. So the tax was first collected in fiscal year 2019 to 20. And the information about the revenue is listed here. The only audited data we have, so 2020 was the first year we have audited data for. The revenue was about $460,000. And our 2021 data is still pending our completed audit, which should be brought to council in the coming months. And then our projected revenue for this current fiscal year is $470,000. We've listed out all of the programs that are funded by this measure to date for where we've programmed it. We have some uses in fiscal year 2019 and 20 for administrative services. We have spent amounts the previous fiscal year, and then we have planned amounts for this coming fiscal year. The programs include parks maintenance, as we've discussed, the urban forestry program, which takes care of our street trees, and our open space maintenance program. We also have money set aside for when we need to go to council to fund major playground repairs, and we have money held in reserve for capital improvements. There's a small amount that we use annually for fund administration, including for the financial consultants who help administer the revenue, the tax revenue, and fees for the county. So then you can go through this page. There's more information about each of these programs. And as well as when we have them, the annual reports from our financial consultant regarding levy and collection of the tax. Now this page will be updated pending the completed audit, and it will continue to be updated for years to come. So this is your resource for people talking about the tax and et cetera. So the last thing I'll say is that updates on Measure M will be here. Our strategy with planning out how to allocate Measure M was to both invest in the programs we have currently and to reserve a decent amount for as Razoo mentioned, we have various things we want to do to expand our maintenance program. We have the Parks Master Plan coming down the pipeline. We want to balance between the needs we already have and the needs we see in the future, both in terms of enhancements and natural increases to service costs. So as mentioned, you'll see updates here periodically, and allocations of Measure M funding are brought to council as part of operating budget updates, part of the any capital improvement program updates, and potentially for special projects that are brought to council separately. So that is all I have to say, and I'm happy to answer any financial questions, but I will pass it back to Razoo to take us out.
All right, thanks, Devorah. That's essentially it. Here's a couple action shots from this past year, some of the work we've done. And finally, I wanted to end on how to report issues. This is the best way to let us know about an issue you see in the parks or anywhere around town, really. You see a pothole, you see, park that's been vandalized or something that needs some attention. Just let us know through the service request. This is at the main Albany page down at the bottom. There's a big green button there. Service requests, just click on that and put in the information, and that'll get it to the right place. That's the best way to do it. And with that, turn it over for questions.
Okay, thank you. If commissioners could raise their hands, and we'll get some questions in. That'll help me see who is ready with a question. Commissioner Beal, then Commissioner Chang Frank.
Yeah, for Devorah, I wanted to know if you can give us a ballpark estimate of how much money we spend maintaining restrooms at the parks.
I can definitely get you that information. It's the reason I don't have a quick answer for you is because it's embedded in our janitorial services contract. Unless Mark has an answer off the top of his head, but I can certainly get you that information.
I think that's one of our struggles with not having the work order program, because the maintenance of the restrooms crosses a whole number of things, from janitorial services, graffiti, supplies, whatever it might be. And so that would be a really tough thing to pull out at this point. Mm-hmm. But we definitely want to have our updated work order system would help with that.
I think no, I don't want you to quote me on an estimate, but I'm happy to answer any more questions on that.
Chair Martin, are you there?
Off and on, unfortunately, but yes. So next Commissioner Chang Frank.
Hi. First of all, I just want to say thank you for all of your service to the city, and I'm sorry that
Chang Frank.
Yep, got it. Thanks, Chair Martin. Can you hear me? Can everybody else hear me? Okay. And sorry
Yes.
to hear about the graffiti that keeps on coming up, because what a waste of time. So thank you for all of that you're doing. Just a question, and I know that I think, Mark, you presented the last time, or maybe I don't even know. I feel like the last time might have even been pre-pandemic, but wondering about timeline for certain projects that are kind of in the pike, because I totally get that you guys have just been maintaining for a while and that's all you could do with like COVID constraints. But, what part of the thing was going through the master planning process, some of the things that the community wanted were like, we've actually already decided on that, like, yeah, we have a lighting plan already. We actually have a dog park plan already. We just need to implement. So I just wonder, now that we've already had approval by city council to even have those things happen, when could we envision or expect that to actually be executed?
So I'll address that, but I don't have an exact timeline. But one of the things I really liked about the Prop 68 package of projects, I think these were a lot of projects that you're speaking to, things that have been hanging around for a while that we just couldn't get done. And one of the reasons why is they're not large enough to have support a consultant team to help us execute it, and we truly are just strapped with resources, and that's actually one of the big holes. Something in probably the $20,000 to $100,000 range of projects. It's very difficult for us to get done because it takes a lot of the paperwork and process and administrative support as a larger project, but it doesn't have the budget scale to support it. And so packaging them all together really allows us. And my approach is going to be to hire a consultant to basically execute the whole suite of projects as a single project. We're trying to queue that up. So the idea is that could be done in a pretty short order. So I don't have specifics, but that's our plan, and that's I think the best way for us to get it. So I think I'm trying to put the pieces in place to make that happen in a pretty short order.
So just a follow-up question. Thanks. That sounds like a really creative solution. And as a consultant myself, I know that we've sometimes been hired out by government, agencies just to be like on-call staff. So I think that's a great solution for filling that need. Wondering though, as a commission, and I've sort of, and I know Isabel's not here today, but I've always struggled as a commissioner, like, when would we get any kind of input and to be able to say like what are priority projects, right? I mean, I'm asking you, you may not know. We're just wondering, like,
I can help with that. So one of the things we've been doing, and I'll admit we've sort of struggled with getting on a good cycle on this, is to come to the commission, come and do a CIP update, and with that come to the commissions and have them have input on projects. And one of the beauties of having the master plan, I think we have sort of a shared document to draw from in terms of what that is. So it's not just the new shiny thing that's coming. It's coming from a vetted plan. And so our plan right now is to, I think in the first part of the year, go to council with what I'll call a status update on the CIP, which is just, we're not really going to add new projects, but we're going to give a status update of where we are in all the projects, not just park projects, but the whole suite of projects. And then that's going to tee us up for the spring to do a full update of the capital improvement plan. And the idea is to sort of, we have this 2-year operating budget. And so in the off year of the operating budget, come in with an update to the CIP, so they're not competing with each other. And that takes staff time, and actually looking at a CIP budget is distinctly different than looking at an operating budget. So it's kind of provides some separation there. So our goal is to come to the commission, talk about which projects, and now we'll have a basis to put them in the CIP, and then there's a discussion about what the priorities are.
Okay, thanks.
and some of this is, one of the things we've also been doing, and this is not only with parks but across everything, is we're working with a grant consultant, because I think one of the pieces of this is funding these projects. So the idea is being able to look out ahead to say that XYZ project kind of fits with this grant that's coming up in 6 months, a year, whatever it might be, and that can help guide sort of the priorities for these various projects.
Thank you. Commissioner Kent?
All right, thanks. A couple of questions. Along the lines of Brian's question, so if we don't know the amount of money for maintaining restrooms, do we know the effort? Because when I'm at Memorial Park, it seems like they clean it every night, and kept fairly clean, I think. I'm not sure if it's every night, but it seems that way. Aside from the graffiti issue, is it a daily thing to clean the restrooms?
I think Razoo is looking at the janitorial schedule right now. Each restroom has a slightly different schedule based on use, and sometimes it's one that we add to it or subtract. So he'll give us the numbers right now.
Yeah, for Memorial Park, it's 3 times a week, kind of during the winter season, and 4 times a week during the summer. We get 2 weekend cleanings when it's busier and the weather's nicer.
And that's contracted out, right? That's
yes.
Yes,
right?
And then that's also supplemented, like I said, by our staff, which goes in there and checks on the restrooms on a pretty regular basis. I think between the park stewards and our staff, it's pretty much daily that we're in there making sure that everything's stocked. There are cases where we do miss things, and that's where putting in a work order a service request can help us to get on it right away.
Yeah, I think there's sand in the water fountain issue continually, but I want to say that graffiti wall inside the bathroom seems to work pretty well. That one wall with the wave in it, it's very rarely that's marked up, but the other walls seem to get marked up because they're beautiful white, clean board. Come draw on me, kind of begging to be written on. A couple of questions though. So how about street cleaning on Solano? Not the actual street itself, but the sidewalks. Does the city do that, or is that all done by the retail association or volunteer, the Blue Glove team?
Well, we have a weekly street sweeping up and down Solano. But as far as sidewalks are maintained by the adjacent property owner, whether that be in the commercial district or in residential areas. The property owner is responsible for maintaining that sidewalk area.
Okay, even for human waste and stuff of that sort, that's on the.
Well, I would say we also we respond to a lot of trash pickup calls that get called in, so we don't have necessarily a trash run like we do at the parks, but the trash cans are picked up by Waste Management. One of the things we run into with Waste Management is if the trash cans are overflowing, they won't pick them up. And so then there's that we either get called out, Blue Glove crew, whoever, works at it. The other troubling area is bus stops. And that's one of the struggles we've had with, there's a current contract with, Clear Channel to do the maintenance. And, they put this little trash can that's probably as big as the one I have in my office, and they think that's going to work, and they're just not really set up. And one of the things we're trying to work with them is try to better manage the cleaning and trash around bus stops, and that's something that's evolving, and probably going to change how we're doing it, and we'll probably take on a little bit more of the trash management at the bus stops.
Yeah, I know, and I think they're tending to take those shelters out because the maintenance is too much for them, which is unfortunate. Last question was, how about homeless camps and waste that comes with homeless? Is that part of the maintenance, or is that every time called in? Like I think Susan Schwartz sent us a thing on the camp at I think it's Cordonesis Creek, which was cleaned, I think, mostly by volunteers. But how is that managed when you have these periodic episodes?
So when we get calls, there have been times where city staff would respond to this, but we've really gone to a point where we bring in a contractor, ServPro or something similar to that to do the cleanup, and that's tracked separately to an account for that activity.
And I should say that we don't just go out there and we don't have them go out there right away. We work pretty closely with Sid and the other folks in the community services to ensure that we approach the homeless folks first with services and offer that, and then kind of will come in and clean up afterwards.
Oh, right. I was thinking more of abandoned sites, but yeah, there's a whole sensitive area that's existing.
Right. Yeah, and if it's abandoned sites, I think that's entirely appropriate for us to do with contractors. That's something that we're not equipped to handle. Potentially dangerous or infected sharps and so on.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
I guess I can just jump in.
Commissioner Mindry?
I just was curious about the some of the budget stuff, and I'm curious about this reserve that you talked about, because I noticed that like for Measure M, almost all of 2020s went to this reserve. So is there like this mandate for how much you have to keep in the reserve, and then what is, you said it was like a capital improvement reserve, so and for emergencies, so is it like repair things only? Is it what is that reserve? How is that used?
Thank you. That's a great question. I love talking about this. So that first year, it's sort of just accounting wise, the revenue came in after the budget for that year had been approved. It's kind of as simple as that on that case. But to get more in depth, good budgeting principles tend to be, in my opinion, to keep something like 20% of annual revenue in reserve. That aligns with the city's general budgeting strategy for the general fund. For example, we keep, I believe, 20 to 25% in reserve to support the city's budget needs. To kind of go into more detail about the capital reserve, it's held in that way for two reasons. The first thing is, we're talking here about ways we want to improve maintenance. We've noted problem areas or areas, like the bus shelters or things like that, where we foresee having to take on more maintenance. Of course, bus shelters isn't in parks, but that's an example of a place where our service would expand in Public Works. Were those places where we foresee it expanding. So we don't want to, in the first year of a tax collection, we don't want to book it up completely. We have a number of revenue sources that are dedicated to parks needs, and we want to apply this one judiciously. So that's for operations. And then for capital, we knew when we started receiving this revenue that a parks master plan was coming into play, and that we were going to have projects coming out of that, and that part of what was written into the ballot measure was to include enhancements to our city facilities. So again, instead of dedicating all of that money right away, making sure that we were able to essentially save a little bit. So these new projects that were coming up, we could either have some money to fund them or have money to be able to act as matching funds for larger grants that we would potentially be getting for more ambitious projects. I think I got all your questions. Let me know if I missed anything.
That was everything. Thank you. I had a second quick question about the trash and bathroom at the waterfront. First of all, thumbs up to those big bellies for the waterfront, especially because there's always is the bathroom there maintained by the city, or is that the parks?
No, that's maintained by the East Bay Regional Parks District.
Okay.
And we meet with them pretty regularly to kind of coordinate our activities out there.
Thank you.
Okay, I had a few questions. One was for the Measure M, why is there no capital improvement for 2022? Where did the rest of that money go?
Let me pull up the website just to make sure I understand.
For the reserve, why is there no reserve for 2022? Whereas there was 187,000 in last year's.
So the annual revenue is 470K. So for 2022, we budgeted 96 towards our parks maintenance program, about 200 towards urban forestry, 60 towards open space maintenance. And the biggest need we foresee for essentially, and then some for financial. The biggest need we foresee for capital needs, for capital work is the playground repairs that Razu talked about coming out of that survey we did. So that is the remainder of the money is here. That's where it's booked up for right now. For 2023, we may plan this a little bit differently, just based on needs, but that all adds up to 470 for this year's income.
So the playground repairs would maybe the only playground repairs specific ones I remember Razu mentioning were on the Greenway, the workout equipment. Is there something else people have in mind?
Yeah, there's the rehabbing the rubber surfaces at all the playgrounds. That's something that needs to be done on a regular basis. You could take a look at the Peggy Thompson Park, for instance. You go out there and you can see that it's already starting to get degraded by the sun. And this is a regular maintenance thing that they put some sort of coating on there that helps protect it a little bit more. And then in some of the other parks, it's degraded to the point where it needs to be cut out and replaced with new rubber surface.
Okay.
So
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I was just gonna say that, so going forward, any costs that are identified as recurring expenditures, we're catching up on a backlog of work, and any costs that are identified as recurring expenditures will be incorporated into that functional program as part of the operating budget, to which Measure M funnels in as funding support.
Okay, because that does sound like recurring. A lot of certainly the surfaces would be a recurring thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we probably have a little more work now than we would on a year in which it was happening more regularly. So we'll do that now, and then in future years, we'll continue to build whatever that sort of true cost is into our operating budget.
And for Prop 68, we requested some sort of shade over the play area, and that might help with the maintenance of the preservation of that surface there at Pier Street Park. Also for Measure M, that $633,000 that's money in the capital improvements for reserve for improvements in new facilities. Basically, that's the kind of thing that we have this whole process for Prop 68 to decide on about $450,000. And is it the case that $633,000 is something that is under the purview of our commission?
So I'll give you a mixed answer, which is that so the Prop 68 was a specific kind of grant opportunity, and the decision was really helpful from the commission in prioritizing the projects. Now, this funnels into what Mark was talking about, where that reserve, which granted may also be used to support some of the maintenance improvements that come out of the Parks Master Plan. It just depends. But we certainly want the commission's input on the projects that go into our capital improvement plan, to which this funding would then be allocated in the ways that make the most sense. For example, so the projects that are your highest priorities, some of them, it may make more sense to use Measure M as a matching component for a larger grant. Others, there may be another funding source or a budget that could be supported by this totally, or any number of scenarios. So we'll do the thing that makes the most sense, but we certainly want the commission's input on the projects that are prioritized coming up.
Okay, well, certainly in the Parks Master Plan process, we prioritized projects, and some of those got funded with Prop 68, but there's plenty of other ones with a longer time frame. And so it seems like we could start to work on those as well with this money. Is that what you're saying?
So that the guys, Mark and Razu also probably have insights on this, but our biggest challenge, we're actually very lucky as a city. Of course, financial resources are always, a concern, and we want to make sure that we're using public funds in the smartest way. We also certainly have to consider the people resources we have. So with the Prop 68 money, like Mark said, we plan to hire a project manager to take care of implementation. But so that certainly goes into our capital improvement planning, whereas, we have the project prioritization in the Parks Master Plan, but the CIP is our implementation plan for scheduling those things based on all of the resources we need to incorporate into them.
Can I just add another overlay? So in some level, I kind of look at this as the budget Tetris, the game Tetris, trying to fit it together where, we first start with the projects we want to do and prioritize them. We have a sense of what the costs are. And then I think it's an ongoing discussion with the commission about what the priorities are, what the funding opportunities are, both grants and internal. And then we kind of play with the different sources to come up with the ability to fund projects at different times. And we'll do that obviously in consultation with you guys and in the budget process. So it's not like, I don't look at this as, this is all the money that we have. It's how do we leverage this with our other things to get the projects done that we want.
Okay. For Prop 68 work, is that, when do you anticipate that going out to bids to get the consultants?
So we did, I did want to actually add this because we had a similar question earlier. So part of just the Prop 68 process, and then I'll turn it over to Mark for a schedule, but part of the Prop 68 process is going through essentially the grant agreements and paperwork, and government, it takes time. So we're working through that process right now, and hopefully should have the agreement signed in the beginning of the year.
You mean between the city and the state to secure the funding?
So I'll turn it over to Mark on the project itself.
Yeah, so like I see this as the collection of projects. So our first approach is to get a project manager on because in my mind, these are a collection of small projects. So it's someone who can tease this apart, and like at the dog park, we're going to do fencing changes. So we'll get a fencing contractor, work through our contracting process for that. So it's not going to be a single bid. It's going to be a collection of small things that add up to the overall scope that we discussed.
Okay, so but that hire will happen with Prop 68 funds or separate funds?
Yes, okay. And my hope is to get that in place. So as soon as the money, as soon as we get the okay, we can start working on it. But the idea would be to have all this stuff lined up so that when we turn it on, we can turn it on and work to completion.
Okay. And then for SB 30, a totally different subject, for SB 1383 that talked about organics, and Razu seemed to say that was a lot of organics. it sounds like we're mandated to use a certain tonnage or something of organics. And one question was, is it basically the same amount we're already using, or is the state basically forcing us to use way more than we ever have?
Yeah, and as I understand it, the state set this requirement to help generate a market or develop a market for organics, compost and mulch. And I think there's some other options you can use it for, I think, energy, energy production or whatever. I did a quick calc. This would be like, picture a football field, like 3 to 4 feet deep every year. So that's a lot. That's a lot of organics. So we're gonna do our best to do things like look at top dressing our ball fields and things. But I think all the cities are struggling with how to handle this number. And I think one of the things that I've read or heard about is that it was done on a population basis. So if Albany was in a rural part of the state that had lots of land, we'd get the same amount, and I don't know, we would have fields. But we're in a highly urbanized area that's more difficult, and I think that's a struggle all communities are going through right now. I think Oakland's can fill the Oakland Coliseum every couple of years or something. So it's going to be a real struggle for all agencies, and I think we're going to do our best to try to handle this, but it's going to be an evolving process. And we use a fraction of what our requirement is.
I'll comment on it budget wise, just that so this is part of what we project to see, increasing costs for us. We have to ourselves purchase the materials. We can work with our, landscape, et cetera, contractors to purchase material and apply it. As Mark said, it's an evolving process, but we've sort of started to scope that out in our budget, and it'll continue to be a cost that we have to see how it impacts that park maintenance kind of bottom line.
And my last question for now is the 5-bar wood chips. How is that different? I mean, I don't know about wood chips, so is that a brand or is that a certain type?
Yeah, that is a brand. As a brand of
5-bar wood chip that's being used.
Sorry, it is a brand of wood chips, but they're engineered in such a way that they're safer for kids to fall on. So they don't have splinters or jagged edges that would cause an injury. They're set up in such I don't know how they do it, but they cut it in such a way so that it doesn't create splinters, and it also kind of piles up in a nice fluffy way so that when somebody falls off the slide, they're not going to bump their head and come off of there with an injury.
Okay, well, that sounds like that could be of interest also for the dog park, as people have been saying they'd like to see the dog park open year round, and maybe wood chips like that would be friendly to dogs as well would be something to look into. Okay, and Commissioner Beal?
Yeah, I had, I guess, a comment on that and a couple questions. Because I don't know if everybody on this call is aware of this, but Albany is the 35th most dense city in the United States. We have 20,000 people in 1 square mile. And it sounds like this requirement is based on population and not on land size. And it should be based on the land size. So somebody, I'm not sure who, should give feedback to our elected representatives that, hey, we should get an offset. This sounds like it's contrary to the desire of the state law. If we're being asked to use something that we don't need, it doesn't make sense. But the other comment I would have is that if there is such a requirement, it sounds like it might be a good a topic for future agenda item for this commission or possibly other commissions, how, what are ways we can use mulch and so forth. I know in the master plan update, I saw there was a presentation on an activity called sheet mulching. It looked like it would be very popular among Albany residents. So I would suggest, maybe we have not our next meeting, but at some point we should have an agenda item to talk about how to use this mulch. And I know we produce a lot of mulch in Albany too. So there's a lot of people making an effort to do that. And I'm wondering, if we should get offsets. And so there should be, it's not a short-term thing, it's a long-term thing, but there should be a feedback cycle back up to Sacramento to say, hey, this doesn't quite fit for us. And something like that happened in the schools here for because UC Village, the students go here, we don't get the property tax, and they give us an offset. So that was my comment.
Okay, thank you. Any other?
Just one quick question on the same topic, the compost and mulch. Is that specifically for use by the city, or could that be distributed to residents for use as well?
I think it's used within the city, and I think there could be giveaways and things like that. I think that's and I like every city's dealing with this. So I think if you went into the mulch broker business and set up accounts it's
let me write.
No, but I think it's one of the things people are struggling with, and I think I think one of the last comments about we already use a lot of mulch. One of the, I think, peculiarities of this is that trees that we chip and use that mulch doesn't qualify for our allotment. So in some ways we have to send that to a processor, then buy it back. So there's a lot of things that a lot of people are struggling with. And I think this is going to be maybe our next presentation will give an update on sort of where we are and what we're seeing and how we're trying to do with it. But it's going to be, I imagine, a couple of years of trying to figure it out.
Okay, Commissioner Kent, and then we'll get to public comment.
Yeah, just one more question. So when you say mulch, is it really mulch or is it compost? Because I think what they're using is the green waste. It's not really the mulch we're thinking, not really wood chips, is it? It's more.
So there's both mulch and compost, and there's a conversion to depending on which one you use to get up to the tonnage.
Compost seems more difficult to find a home for, but maybe I'm wrong.
It's more difficult, but you get more of a credit. You have to use less of it. So.
Okay. All right, Sid, if you could let in our attendee with their hand up.
Okay, I guess I only get 3 minutes. So we got a lot of playgrounds. Maybe we could build a big kids playground and build a parkour course. I hope no one falls on these playgrounds and files an insurance claim for falling. I don't know what the liability with the city is with people falling on wood chips. Hey, I got a good idea on maybe these bathroom problems. If we want to get like a public Albany card, like a library card or something, and we could swipe it. We could swipe it to get into the bathrooms, that way we could at least monitor kind of who's going in bathrooms or not. That's not the purpose, but at least maybe people will do less graffiti. Or I don't know, is graffiti a bad thing? It could be art in public spaces, right? I mean, unless the graffiti is offensive. But if the graffiti is a butterfly, cool, just leave it there. Okay, so all these contractors are contracted with the city for janitorial services and landscaping. Okay, so the tools they're using, are those gas powered? Because they should be electric powered, because that's what our other committees working on. Everything's supposed to be electric. Okay, so these big bellies, I know I put in maintenance requests for these big bellies for the inside liner to be cleaned on Solano Avenue, and they've never been cleaned. If you open those yourselves and look in there, there's mold everywhere. There's germs everywhere. You say you keep out rats or whatever, but you sure keep in germs and you sure keep in mold, because those trash can liners never get cleaned. And all Public Works need to do is gather those up and bring them down to Public Works and power wash them. I put in the work requests. And when you talk about Jack and Jill, that's socialism, or that's a bad thing, because what about non-binary people? You can't just say Jack and Jill, because Jack and Jill refers to just male and female. You got to say Jack and Jill and they and them. Okay. So also, let's see here. Oh yeah, all the $500,000 Measure M. Haven't you got it yet? Measure M is maintenance. Get it? All this money is going to maintenance. Measure M is for maintenance, right? Take $1,000 of that 470,000. Take 1,000 and create jobs for the homeless people to clean up some of this trash. Create jobs for the homeless, a minimum wage job, so they can clean up the bathrooms or clean up some graffiti. Just $1,000. Just to create a program. Do something good with $1,000. And also, last but not least, I know I may be going over my time, but I only get 3 minutes. I wrote all these notes down. Let's see here. Yeah, bathrooms should get cleaned every day. You know, is that how we take care of our homes? Oh, every other day, every 3 days in the winter, we do it more or less? No, let's clean the city how we would do our homes every day. Because what if someone has diarrhea and then all of a sudden it's all over the walls and all over the toilet sitting for 2 days? You know, now we've got a biohazard issue on day 3. So let's just get our act together and get organized and clean the bathrooms every day, please. I probably over my time, so.
Okay, yes, thank you. And who on staff would like to start taking a crack at some of those?
Are there any in particular that stood out that we could start with? Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So Razu, you want to do this? Talk about what we started doing?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute there, just talking. And can you guys see that the picture I shared?
Yes.
Okay. So we did start doing a biannual cleaning of the big bellies. We've done 1 round so far. We're probably due for the next round. This is something that this company does all over the place, and they come by and they got a pretty slick setup there where they hose everything down, clean out the steam clean the inside and outside of the big bellies, and leave it much better than it was. So I think that's a good thing that we've started to do. So.
Let's see. There's what are some things? What are some city monies that go towards programs to help disadvantaged folks to help with cleanup or creek maintenance or anything like that? Are there any opportunities for people in those situations or opportunities to expand those?
So one place that we invest money as part of our maintenance programs is for our creeks and open space. We partner with the Richmond organization Urban Tilth, which mentors and trains disadvantaged youth to do vegetation management and cleanup in those areas. So we have a 3-year contract with them, and they work in Cordonices Creek, in Cerrito Creek, and on Albany Hill.
Okay. All right. So let's bring it back to the commission then. Any other final comments before we move on to the next agenda item? Okay.
I would just say thank you for the report and thank you for the continued work. I can speak on behalf of the Blue Glove crew. We certainly appreciate it when the cans got clean, because yeah, they get really gross. And I think the locks were changed recently or updated or something, but yeah, things are looking much better.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, thank you. We look forward to the next update and what can be done with that Public Works Reserve and how Prop 68 progress is going. Next up, item 6, discussion and possible action on matters related to the following items. 6.1, Ohlone Greenway Public Restroom Subcommittee. The subcommittee will provide a status update, Beal and Kent. Staff recommendation for information only. Take it away, Commissioners Beal and Kent.
Is it okay if I start?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, basically we got handed this, I guess, early this year. I took it up a little bit over the summer, had some informal discussions with residents, and then Commissioner Kent came on and kind of looked at a different area, looked at some of the logistics of the actual restrooms. So what I found is there are some rocks along the shore, so to speak, they didn't quite expect. But what I found overall, the public seems to be favorable to the idea of a public restroom, but not necessarily along the Ohlone Greenway. So that's the reason why, and we have that in the sub-report, that maybe where we're going is to send this back to council to look at where, what should be done with it. It seems to me that the issue actually crosses several commissions' jurisdictions. The objection we got, and there was an email that came in, I guess, around the time of the last commission meeting or the one before that, we got an email from a resident that was concerned about the idea of it being there. And so I think what we'll see is on the location side of it, we'll see potential objections from adjacent property owners or residents. So that's where I see this as kind of becoming a planning and zoning issue as to where the restroom should be. And particularly there's another aspect to this, rock along the shore, so to speak, is that this is really an open space. It's not a park. And it's an open space that primarily goes through an R1 district, except for along Solano. So I think a public restroom is something that people would expect to see in an R3 district, but being a denser business type district, rather than in a residential district. So that's where I see them coming in. The need for a public restroom isn't just a recreational issue, it's a social justice issue. So that part of it, if it drifts outside the open space or parks, that part of it is something that may fall under the Social and Economic Justice Commission. So ultimately, I think, we're going to want to send this back to the city council with some kind of guidance. But I think, it needs to get routed around. But the big thing is, what's the best place? And is it really? Because I think there's a clear need out there. It needs to be established more. And I think this is going to be, a longer term process. But why don't you take it away and give your take, Chris?
Yeah, so Brian and I have had a couple discussions, but we haven't really had information's coming in from different angles. I don't think we've really vetted out enough public input to make a decision whether or not we know where it's going to go. We had a couple, it's like affordable housing. Everybody thinks it's needed. Nobody wants it next to their house. It has a bad connotation. Obviously, restrooms a lot different than that. So it can be a lot worse. Affordable housing is generally pretty well managed. But it's one of those things where everybody sees it's a good thing, but nobody wants it here. And the restroom is... the only people speaking up are people that don't want it, right? But there's probably a lot of people out there and businesses that get impacted by it that aren't necessarily speaking up. I'm thinking Solano retail. Obviously, I have a storefront in Oakland that we're constantly cleaning the front of that up. I imagine the businesses along Solano are doing the same issue. Same thing. So I'm not convinced the Greenway is not a bad place for it. It seems to be that in Solano. It seems to be opportunities, but I don't. This is just my own gut feeling. We haven't really reached out. We don't have enough public input. So we kind of made our little presentation, which is we need to look at other communities that put one in. What are the issues? Is it causing more problems than it's curing? We have a few restrooms now, like Memorial Park was discussed earlier. There's the restroom down at the Bulb. What issues take place there? What takes place at Memorial Park? What takes place at the library? These sorts of things can help us kind of understand what will take place if we have a restroom that's open 24/7 in a new location. A lot of these restaurants close. So also I looked at a lot of the laws concerning restrooms, and a lot of public buildings have to supply public restrooms. That's kind of the law. And what is exactly public starts getting a little tricky. The fire department, police station, and if it's City Hall, which is a public building, does it only has to do it during working hours? It's been closed now for a year. I think it might be open now. I'm not quite sure, but so we don't really, the laws requiring public restroom, I'm not sure if we're even complying with those. And a lot of businesses, even though they say they don't have restrooms, supposed to, because their restrooms are determined by their square footage of occupancy, which kind of infers that it's for public use, right? But there's no law forcing if you have retail that you have to provide restrooms to the public. Obviously, you don't want that. But if you're serving food, you do. There's a lot of restaurants that claim they don't have public restrooms, even though they serve food. So it's I guess I'm kind of all over the map here. There's a lot of potential for more public restrooms given the infrastructure we currently have before we go to the expense of building a new one. We just maybe push a little more to get those open. Then there are, if we did go with a new public restroom, is it just we hire it outside and we pay the whatever it is, $1,000 a month for a porta potty, maintenance, clean, everything done, or do we invest in the beautiful plumbed system that the city maintains? It's a huge difference in cost. And also looked into the history of restrooms, and turns out, if you recall, as I grew up, it was always nickel, right? You need a dime or a nickel to go to the restroom, and everybody's outraged by that. But at least those restrooms were available. Now we don't want to do that, but because we don't want to do that, there's no money for maintenance, so there are no restrooms. So the question is, do you want to pay a nickel and have a restroom, or no nickel and have no restroom? And it goes back to what I think it was Jeremy mentioned with the ID card. Obviously, I don't think that's going to work because it has to be available to anyone who needs it anytime, not just the person with the card, not just the person with the nickel. So we're just explaining where we are in this process. We don't have any conclusions yet, and it's a very interesting subject, and we're trying to drill down more before we pass it back for comment.
Okay, do we have any questions from commissioners?
I'm curious, as you consider location, and maybe, I mean, this is kind of what you're saying is you need more information, but what kind of criteria would be used to determine the location? Are you looking at traffic? Are you looking at proximity to residences? I mean, there's all kinds of criteria that you might consider.
That's sort of why I'm saying this isn't a Parks and Rec issue. This is a planning and zoning issue. This needs, this is because, okay, and I also want to say the existing restrooms that we have are either in parks or in city buildings. We're talking about something that's not in a park or in a city building. That's sort of what makes the difference. So yeah, I'm saying we're not, as a commission, we don't have the tools to do that, and we've gotten very little input. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say it's a matter of design. I mean, where are they currently going, and where do the people need a restroom? If the people are urinating in public, or they're doing worse than that, where is that happening? Public maintenance would know that because they're cleaning it up, and so that might help facilitate where one's needed, right? Obviously, if more people on Solano and more Greenway, I would just think that's where one is needed, other than in some remote area where there aren't that many people. But then again, if there's people camping somewhere, obviously that's a need too. So, but that might be a more temporary need. Maybe we're looking at a dozen restrooms. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the issue, and I guess we're kind of moving more into discussion, so maybe we should put off. But yeah.
Okay, other questions, or Commissioner Chang Frank?
Thanks to you both for all your deep thinking and research on this. I'm wondering, what are the follow-up next steps for you? Are you thinking of calling those other cities to find out more about?
Yeah, so I think interview case studies, talk to some maintenance guys with East Bay Regional Park, talk to city maintenance, talked to some other cities that have recently put in. I know the city of San Francisco, even though I don't have a contact there, they've gone through a long process there. Find out basically the public nuisance issues that comes along with them, and if we can handle them, if it's just too much for a small city. Reach out for public input. I don't know how to do this other than say it right here at this meeting. If you're, public, let us know issues you had, good and bad. If there's some issues that you're cleaning up and no one knows about, let us know so we know there's more going on than that the city might be aware of. And then working out some budgets from the very cheapest to the more permanent solution. And then finally, where would the money come from? That's, obviously it's going to be on top of what the city's already doing.
Commissioner Price.
Yeah, I was curious about I guess you just touched on this, but the whole kind of public outreach process, right? Like how do we as a commission sort of perform a public outreach process like this of trying to assess needs, and not just sort of the need that you were referring to of cleanup and we're seeing issues, but also just where does community want a bathroom, and do they need it, and people using Solano Avenue, so everybody. Sorry, I don't have, this is just sort of an open question of sounds like you're grappling with it too, how do we get that information back,
it's kind of a big decision, and it seems like it needs a lot of input on it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what I would say is community input. This is the forum for community input. This is it, the commission, and sending emails and coming to these meetings. And what we've seen is 2 people. So, but I guess, I don't know, we haven't had a lot of participation in city meetings since COVID. So I don't know, this is necessarily an indicator, but the lack of outpouring of support for this makes me feel like, I don't know if we should be looking at it, given everything else. But there you go. That's maybe what it would take is if we really, as a commission, we came to a conclusion that we need to have a public restroom on the Ohlone Greenway. And I would think the next thing would be the city would send little postcards to people. Yeah, kind of like what they do with planning and zoning. And that's why I think it's more, well, I'll just say this. I think, I'll refer to it as the chicken coop rule, right? That if you want to have a chicken coop in the city of Albany, there's a permit required, and you have to have the approval of all the neighbors within 50 feet. So it's in that 50 feet, a property is 100 feet deep typically. So that would take out the people on the next street. I think, wherever we put it, we need the approval of the adjacent property owners. And that's what's so great about an R3. If we put it at Solano, there aren't as many adjacent property owners that are going to care because there's so much else going on there. And there already is a public restroom there. It just doesn't have walls and toilets. And so this will be an improvement, I think, for them. Whereas if you're, for example, if you were on Portland and say Curtis or somewhere, that wouldn't be a place to have a public restroom, And so I think that's what I see we're going to run up against on the Greenway. Is that the only good place seems like it's Solano, and we might get opposition from the business owners, or we might get support from them. So, yeah, that's what I feel.
I think that chicken coop rule, it's an interesting analogy because I actually got a chicken coop permit, but I think I'm the only one ever to do that in the city, and I don't know if it's really legal. I don't think you can let your use on your property be dictated by your neighbor's opinions. Either you have rights or you don't have rights, but it's not the neighbors. You can get input, but they can't necessarily control it. So I don't know if that's illegal. I filled out the form, but I had some kind of constitutional issues with it, where you're asking your neighbors whether or not you can have chickens. And same thing with the restroom. I mean, we don't want to put it in a sensitive place where it's minimizing, but we can't expect people to give their approval or not in kind of a voting. Because they live next door, they can say yes or no on the adjacent property uses. I don't know if that's the way to plan.
Yeah, some of my thoughts on it are the Greenway is actually part of our purview. I don't know if it's a named park or a open space, but it was part of the park's master plan. And so that's something that we shouldn't be shy about trying to, plan for different services or amenities there. I think that particular location is also served by the senior center, is probably the closest public bathroom. And I don't know what the city would, the city could even advertise, I guess. I mean, if it's a public restroom, it's a public restroom, right? Like anybody can walk in and use it. So the city could even advertise on that corner, this way to, 25 feet that way is a public restroom. So that's, and that would be open whatever hours, Sid used to help run that. So whatever we would put in, if it was in that, at the corner of, Solano and Masonic, somewhere around there, it would be like an incremental improvement over what's already there, that people probably don't even know about, is there at the senior center. So that's some other food for thought. One last thing is that I've seen in San Francisco, there's some sort of app or something that shows you, like on a map of the city, where all the poop has been identified, or all the fecal matter has been reported to the city. I don't know exactly. Somehow the city is keeping track of all that. And so you can see like what neighborhoods it's mostly being identified in. And so I think all of our public works people are gone now, but maybe our Blue Glove Crew representative could speak to, that would be one measure of where to put a bathroom. There's lots of other considerations, but Commissioner Abbott, do you have a sense of what the city collects on that, or what the Blue Glove Crew?
Well, I mean, the Blue Glove Crew is hard because all we do is we walk the commercial street, so we're not going to see it in residential. But I tend to think it's probably not happening so much in residential. There's a couple key places. There's a couple on San Pablo and a couple on Solano. And no, they usually don't call city. The city doesn't know about that. They just hose it off themselves, the property owners. And I know a lot of this, not from the Blue Glove Crew, but from my other participation in the business committee, them talking to me and telling us about it. So the question I had was, we've had a public restroom pretty much where we're talking about during the pandemic. And I wonder if you've had an opportunity to talk to the city about how that went. There was a wheelchair accessible restroom or porta potty at basically where the workout equipment is through the pandemic. And it was removed 2 months ago, maybe. And I just wonder if that was kind of a pilot. That was kind of a test, see how that went. Can you get some feedback on that?
I didn't hear about this myself, but I also want to comment on what Brian was saying, because that was one of my early ideas, was the poor man's version of this could be, we could just put up a sign that says public restroom, and we could designate, because there's a public restroom at the community center, which is a pretty decent, well-maintained public restroom. But then the issue with that, it would really go to the maintenance folks, is to, will you be able to handle this? And also, what would be the impact on the library? But to me, that looks like a very economical way to at least be able to tell people that are going along the trail, hey, because that's the need I think the Ohlone Greenway, having it there, fulfills, is you're going, maybe for people out of town, that you're on this bike run or a long run and you want to stop and go to the bathroom. So if there were a sign that said that, I think that would be a good first step, because it's going to take us a year or two to build one.
Okay. Yeah. And Sid, you used to help run the senior center, and what input do you have on that?
So the porta potties were placed during the pandemic because the facilities were closed. We had one across the street from the senior center, and then we had one in the parking lot of the community center. Once those facilities opened on July 6th, those were removed, and the public was allowed in the facilities to use the restrooms during business hours.
And do you have a sense for how much they were used, or were there problems with them? Were they abused?
You know, maintenance was a challenge. There are times when the company wouldn't clean them because they were so dirty. And then we had to have our crew go in and get it to a point where they would come out and clean it, or there were several times where they would just swap them out. So if it was beyond cleaning, they would just replace it with a new one, which would be an extra cost. But that kept the program up and running. But yes, maintenance was a challenge.
Great, thanks for the information.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to open? Yeah. Do we? We're kind of moving into discussion. Do we want to open it for public comment just in case?
Oh yeah, any public comment? Thank you. Okay, Sid, if you could let them in.
Hey, good evening. You know, it's so funny. I was in the middle of writing your commission an email right now. I just didn't know if I was going to get public comment or not. You know, I'll send you the email after. I'll just say my public comment basically. I just want to share that I was doing the math, and if you hired somebody 40 hours a week for $20 an hour, which is a decent wage, $20 an hour, for 50 weeks a year, it comes out to $40,000 per person. And then if you times that by 5, that's $200,000. So we could create 5 jobs for like a park attendee, and that would be 9 to 5. So you'd have a person on site at, let's say, Memorial Park. There'd be a person on site to monitor the bathrooms, or to, help, with situations. If someone falls, maybe this person has an AED device, or able to, call the ambulance. What if a kid falls and there's nobody around? At least, we can have safe parks with a person present. So that would be kind of neat, because we have playgrounds. So that was just a solution I had. $200,000, create some jobs. We can have one person that walks up and down the Ohlone Greenway, or drives Sid's electric car or something, or gets another one because maybe Sid wants to use his own. But that drives, maybe the BART path or something safely, and is able to empty the trash cans or put restock toilet paper or something every day, and check out, go up and down and check each bathroom 5 times a day, or once an hour. But at least you got someone there for 8 hours a day, and you're creating jobs, and there's always someone at the parks. You would feel safer, parents would feel safer letting their kids go to the park because they know there's a city employee there wearing a safety vest or something, and a radio. And all the parks could be connected with a radio, walkie-talkie or something. I don't know. All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to mention one thing on Jeremy's call. Jeremy, the cost of employees are actually much more than that, because it's really multiply their hourly rate by basically 2.6, and that's the real cost with vacation time and insurance and benefits and everything else. So you're looking probably at $250,000 per employee. It's not so simple. It gets very expensive with maintenance. I don't know exactly. I'm just throwing that number out roughly, but it's take-home pay is only one part of what the cost.
All right. Well, any final thoughts from commissioners on the bathroom situation?
I like the idea of a pilot program. I like the idea of proposing a porta potty for maybe 6 months, and you can try different locations even, and get some data on that. I mean, I don't think there's any way around the fact, unless we're going to pay for one of these, $500,000 self-cleaning units. I don't think there's any way to get away from maintenance. That's just something we're going to have to deal with. We deal with it now with the parks. And the problem with relying on the restrooms that are currently in the parks and in the public buildings is that they close at night, and it's in the mornings is when people are discovering problems on their doorstep, and from the other side, it's at the night that these people are having issues they need to deal with. So that's why I like the idea of something that's open 24 hours. Even though it's additional security and maintenance risk, I think it's something that is needed.
Okay, Commissioner Menderes?
Just because you talked about reaching out to other people, bathrooms, similar bathrooms. There are some bathrooms on the Ohlone Greenway in Berkeley on Hearst, I believe, it's kind of near the basketball court. But it's pretty residential area too. So they might have some experience in how people react.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thanks.
Okay, well, seeing no further hands, let us thank the subcommittee, and we look forward to hearing more back from them in the future. Next item is number 7, future agenda items. Commissioners announce requests for future agenda items. Who has ideas for future agenda items? Okay. I know some of the things coming to us from the city include things with the agreement with the tribe. So that's something that might be coming our way soon. And hopefully Prop 68 updates. Hopefully we'll be getting something on those soon. When Isabel gets back, we'll be looking at other things. Commissioner Price.
Actually, I know that maybe everybody knows about this, but I know that the City Council did pass a recent resolution concerning the kind of the ownership management of the bulb, of the city portion of the bulb. And I'm wondering if maybe we can just get an update on that, on the status of that, and kind of what's going on with it. So everybody's kind of aware.
Yeah, the city, we heard from city staff at a recent meeting that the MOU between the city for the transition study was expired, and so now it looks like the city council is looking to do some things out there at the bulb with the $300,000 that had previously been identified. And so, Sid, did you make a note of that? Great. Okay, well, seeing no other hands, the next meeting.
I'm just gonna jump in. I'm pretty sure Brian had something, but he lost his connection. Just was gonna say it. He mentioned it earlier, but he could, maybe reach out to him, and I'm sure he'll have something.
Okay, and he can definitely email Isabel or me or whatever for agenda items. And thank you all for attending. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye all.
Thank you.